Welcome to a new Energy News interview. I'm Norma Martinez, and today we will talk with Peter Bryant, energy and mining expert. Hello, Peter. How are you?
I'm good, Norma. Really well, thank you, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for giving us this space. Today, Peter Bryant, board chair and managing director at Clareo, will talk with us about how to direct the world to just energy transition. So I will start with the first question. Please, Peter, talk to us about your academic and professional career.
Great, thanks, Norma. I split my career up into probably maybe 3 or 4 phases. So actually, from an academic perspective, I was actually trained in finance and accounting. So I spent a few years doing that, and then found actually that was quite boring for me. So I spent the next 28 years in the software industry. So I joined the enterprise software industry, and then did that for several decades, and 10 of those years were in CEO positions. And in 1996, I moved to the US, and about 15 years ago, I started to get interested in other areas. So I started a strategy advisory firm that started working and providing expert advice, firstly across innovation and technology to energy and mining companies. Then I founded a non-profit in that process that focused on economic and social outcomes for communities around resource projects, and increasingly got involved in the venture capital community. So as we fast forward today, become deeply interested in the just transition, ESG, and how innovation is at the core of helping drive those things forward.
Recently, you wrote an article about the strategic difficulty for oil and gas companies to remain profitable as they take on the energy transition. Can you talk about it?
Yeah, Norma, this is a real interesting thing, and particularly coming back from CERAWeek last week.
Yeah.
So I think when I wrote that article, it was really around kind of market forces, that the market wasn't really distinguishing between those oil companies that were investing heavily in the oil transition, energy transition, particularly the European-based companies, BP, Shell, Total, Equinor, versus the US companies that were very focused on emission reductions, but very still focused on oil and gas industry predominantly. And when you looked at the market caps and multiples for those companies, there really was no reward or penalty for either behavior. And in fact, right now, the market's probably giving higher valuations to those companies, delivering higher returns, more focused on oil. So given the higher prices. So I think it is a real conundrum for oil executives, because at the end of the day, they have an obligation to maximize shareholder value, ultimately. And so it is. So I think at some point the market will adjust. So it's just strategically how companies and over what period of time they invest in this transition. So I don't have a good answer for this, because I think it is a real conundrum. And particularly, this is not just about profits for oil companies. I'll say a lot of these oil companies, and I've spoken to pension fund managers, these anchor a lot of pension funds, and they are high yield stocks. And a lot of pension funds, rely on their yields for the returns in the pension fund. So it's more than just oil company profits that we're talking about here. So it's deeper and more complex.
Do you think oil and gas companies should be more aggressive in their energy transition plans as the race for renewables moves forward?
So this is an interesting question, Norma, and my answer today is different from the answer I would have given before CERAWeek. Okay, so I'll give you my post CERAWeek. It's a yes or no answer. So I think these two opposing forces that have been at work, which is one, investing in energy transition and disinvesting in the oil and gas industry, which is really the public and governmental pressure we're seeing, actually has been turned on its head. And I think that became very apparent in CERAWeek, just because of the war in the Ukraine. And I think, really, and this kind of gets into the just transition, what I consider two opposing forces now need to become complementary. I think we need to increase our investment in energy transition and accelerate it, and at the same time increase our investment in oil and gas production. Okay, and previously those were two opposing thoughts. Now I think they need to be complementary, because they need to happen. And at the heart of making that happen, it really brings into the spotlight kind of the approach the just transition demands. So I think the Aramco CEO said it best at CERAWeek, where he said, the energy transition, which he believes in, has been very chaotic and kind of an off the cliff kind of approach till now, is that we need to much more thoughtful, strategic approach to this. That first puts energy security at the heart of it whilst we're transitioning. So So I think it's really interesting. So the answer is yes, but also at the same time as we're doing increased investment in oil and gas, which makes it complicated, yes?
In your professional opinion, why do you think no company has figured out how to make money in a low carbon energy world?
That's an interesting question. I don't know if they haven't figured out how to make money. So when you look at companies like Ørsted, which are 100% renewable energy, you know, on the generation side, they certainly make money. But yeah, the thing is, particularly when you compare it to the oil industry, the returns aren't the same. So that's one of the big challenges for oil companies is they're investing in new businesses that they can't get the same returns on capital or profit margins that they are in oil and gas. And again, it gets down to this pension. So if I'm doing dividend yields that pension funds rely on, and I'm now investing in a transition to a business where I've got a lot lower returns of capital and dividend yields, which then lowers returns to pension funds, that's a problem. You know, so how do you make an orderly transition? So, and the big question is, and it's hard to unpick, a lot of people talk about, you know, when government subsidies are gone, is there really profit in this marketplace? So I question it. So I think it's a real challenge. And, you know, it's classic, you know, and being a person out of the software industry is, if I was a tech entrepreneur, and this is kind of Elon Musk's attitude towards EVs, is it's all about getting market share first, not profit. Okay, so and Amazon did that, is you get to a particular market density of adoption of whatever it is you're offering, and then you worry about profits. I don't think the renewable energy sector is doing that as a deliberate strategy, but that's what the outcome is. And maybe that's the way shareholders should think, is rather than I'm trying to build a profitable business today, maybe it's a provocation, is like the tech industry, I should be worried about more around market share, reinvest everything in growing market share. And at some point you get to a concentration, economies of scale, where profit then starts becoming more important. So
environmental sustainability and economic prosperity have been faced in modern society. What do governments need to do to achieve this compatibility?
This is a real tough area, Norma. So as a believer and advocate of a just transition, and I listen to a number of African ministers and CEOs at CERAWeek. Yeah, I mean, this is a moral issue. Is, you know, there's still 1 billion people without electricity. Okay, and 1 billion with inefficient access to electricity. And we know electricity and affordable energy is the backbone of growing prosperity. And I think that we need to balance this kind of environmental protection with, you know, which is really a human right, basic human right, is access to affordable, reliable and secure energy, and that's as clean as possible. So, you know, one African minister said that the West can't expect a person with no foot to carry the burden of its energy transition. So we need, I think, for moral clarity, we can't impose on countries in Africa and other places this kind of energy transition model that doesn't work for them. You know, we need to adapt. We need to become innovation centers for technology, you know, that allows them to adopt natural gas, even coal maybe, in a way, but also give them a transition path. And an example of that would be, okay, I'll build a natural gas plant or even a coal plant with carbon capture. And usually that has a 40-year return, has to be operating 40 years. Maybe we should innovate financially so they can run it for 10 years till we can transition to something else and we make that affordable. The flip side in the developed world is, and I live in California, is you can't do policies that increase the costs of energy such that, you know, it's a nuisance for the middle class and up, but it's a real burden for the lower socioeconomic ladder, people on the ladder. So, for example, I did a back of an envelope that in California we pay, before this energy crisis, people paid between $2,500 to $3,000 a year more for electricity and gasoline compared to a basket of Colorado, Texas and Florida. Okay, and that's a nuisance for me. It's annoying, but for somebody that's earning $30,000 a year, that's a choice between meals, things for their children, etc. So I think, you know, the social equity side, both in our country for lower socioeconomic areas and in the developing world, is something that needs to be a lot more thoughtful, and governments just need to think about this and provide kind of regulatory frameworks that don't prescribe solutions, because this is where you get unattended consequences, but be more supported, more innovative.
Some countries have enacted measures to restructure parts of their energy sectors to become greener. Please talk to us what New Zealand is doing to encourage this compatibility.
Thank you. So New Zealand's one of two countries, along with Iceland, actually, to the best of my knowledge. It might be somebody new on the block that have adopted a just transition as kind of a policy. So I was invited by the New Zealand Prime Minister to speak at the kind of kick-off multi-stakeholder summit that she held in early 2019 to begin this. And really what it's about, Norma, is what governments can do to encourage this compatibility is really convene all the parties together. And what a just transition's about is so people understand, the different trade-offs that need to be made to create this compatibility and fairness. So, and one of the principles of a just transition is to avoid a situation where the burden of these transitions and making things greener are carried by a few, the people that can't afford the burden, and the value goes to a chosen few. So, that's just unfair. And so New Zealand's really engaged on kind of an innovation model with clear pathways with everyone to, get to, this greener future. I mean, they're fortunate they have a very low carbon electricity system in the first place. So they're really focused on, transportation emissions, agricultural methane emissions to do that. And, water's a key part of this too, water quality. And I think, as one senator said, at CERAWeek, Senator Manchin, is at the end of the day, no one wants dirtier water, no one wants dirty air. We all want cleaner water and clean air. No one would argue with that. So, but I think the path New Zealand's taken, and I don't know the detail of Iceland, but I think when you get everybody in the room that co-create these pathways forward, takes longer at the front end, Norma, but you get there faster and will result in a cleaner environment for everyone.
What is the US doing to promote this compatibility?
I don't think we're doing anything, to be honest, Norma. I think the US, this is just my opinion, I've lived in this country since '96, I'm a US citizen. I think we've got a long way to go in the US, because I think, we have become too myopic about climate change as the sole driver. And I always think there's 4 pillars to an energy transition. And we've become over-focused on one pillar, and to the detriment of all the other pillars that I think need to be addressed in an energy transition. So I think the Ukraine, is readjusting the political agenda and the government thoughts out. I mean, gasoline in the US I saw $6.99 a gallon at a gas station yesterday in LA. So it's going to again focus mine. So I'm hoping the US government kind of readjusts and gets a much more balanced approach than it has had in the last couple of years.
Do you think it is enough, or what is missing for this transition period?
Yeah, I think this is not a political right or left debate. This is, we all want a cleaner environment, but at the end of the day, the first obligation is to provide, as I said, reliable, accessible, affordable energy, and it's as clean as possible. And we need to be smart about it. We can't turn off things before their life's over, or we have a reliable, secure alternative. So I think people need to put down kind of extreme positions and be thoughtful about achieving these goals. So affordable energy for everyone, secure energy for everyone, both in the developed and the developing world, and in a way that addresses all the needs, not just a singular need.
Thank you very much, Peter Bryant, for giving us this interview. It was very nice to meet you.
Norma, thank you for having you as a guest. I really enjoyed the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you for the audience. See you soon in another new energy interview.